So you're curious about life here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Well, I have got you with some insider information. Whether you are headed here because you have PCS orders to Camp Lejeune or one of the satellite bases, or you're just someone who is looking for somewhere affordable to live, where it's close to the beach and you get to enjoy that beautiful North Carolina weather, I'm going to let you in on all the pros and cons of living in Jacksonville from my experience of being in Onslow County for 10 plus years. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to Camp Lejeune PCS Homes with Emily. It's me, Emily. I'm a local realtor here in Jacksonville, North Carolina, serving Eastern North Carolina, and I especially love working with military families as they prepare for their PCS here to Camp Lejeune or whichever satellite base you are going to be stationed at. So today we're going to talk about living in Jacksonville, what it's like, what to expect. So let's get into it. Let's just start by talking about the size of Jacksonville so you know what to expect. In Jacksonville, the population's about 70,000, and so it's a medium-sized city. It might feel humongous compared to where you came from if you came from a small town, but if you came from a big city, it's probably going to feel a little bit smaller for you. It is the size of city where we have like a mall, there's Target, there's shopping centers, there's multiple grocery stores, multiple elementary schools, high schools, all of that. It's a pretty good sized city in those respects. Now, a lot of the population here in Jacksonville is affiliated with the military in some kind of way because we have Camp Lejeune, which is the biggest Marine Corps base, I think, in the world. So we have a big military population here, including active duty and then people who are retired from the military, people who work on the base as a contractor, things like that. A lot of the employment around here is government affiliated. That's not to say everyone who lives here works on the base, but it is a good percentage of the population, like a lot of people. With that, with there being such a high percentage of military members living here in Jacksonville, the population is actually quite a bit younger than the rest of the country, than the average populations of other cities. Would you believe the average age is actually only 23 years old? So it's a pretty young population overall. There's still people who come here to retire or who live their whole life here and retire here. So there still are populations in every age group, but that average age is pretty young. And that accounts for the military members, the active duty members who live here. And then also a lot of those younger military members have young families. So that takes into account all of the children that are here in Jacksonville, and it really just makes it for a pretty young population. Let's talk about the traffic. With the size of Jacksonville, it's not that large, and thankfully, we don't experience that much traffic. If you're coming from a small town, it might feel like a lot of traffic for you, but if you're coming from a city, say you're coming from Camp Pendleton in San Diego, or you're coming from up in the DC area or any other city, you're gonna come here and say, what traffic? So the lack of traffic is definitely a pro for living here. The only time you're really going to have issues with traffic is maybe if you're going on to Camp Lejeune during the peak hours when everybody is trying to go to work. You might get stuck in traffic a little bit at that time. Now, talking about traffic, I'm going to let you in on a little insider information about the traffic here in Jacksonville. And that is the one traffic issue that you may run into is the geese. If you live here in Jacksonville, then you are familiar with the geese on Western Boulevard. Western is one of the main roads through Jacksonville. It's where you're going to find the mall, Target, Starbucks, all the shopping centers and things like that are pretty much off of Western Boulevard, the newer shopping centers at least. And there are geese here in Jacksonville that love to cross the road right there. And if you are driving down Western and a goose decides to cross the road with all her little goslings, you're going to get stuck until they decide to cross. So that is the traffic issue here in Jacksonville, is that you got to watch out for the geese. Okay, now let's talk about the cost of living in Jacksonville. Lucky for you, Jacksonville's cost of living is quite a bit lower than the national average. Specifically, when we talk about housing, Jacksonville housing is about 30% lower than the national average for housing costs. Now, the newest data that I have access to as a realtor is from January 2025. And that shows me that the average sales price of a house here in the city limits of Jacksonville was $255,000. So this is quite a bit lower than the national average for other cities. And if you're looking for somewhere affordable close to the beach, you're doing pretty good. Keep in mind that price varies. There's a lot of different housing options in Jacksonville. So like apartments, condos, townhouses, regular single family homes. There's houses that are by the beach. There's a wide variety of housing available. Depending on what kind of housing you're looking for, that price is obviously going to fluctuate up or down. And if you want some help finding housing in the best neighborhoods in Jacksonville, tailored specifically to you and your family needs, please feel free to reach out. My info is down in the description, and I'd love to help you find a home here in Jacksonville. Now, since we've already mentioned that Jacksonville is a big military town, let's go ahead and talk about what it's like to live in a city that has a very high military presence. This is such a benefit, in my opinion, and as a military spouse, because the people in Jacksonville come from all over the country. It is like a melting pot. We have people from everywhere coming into Jacksonville, and it creates a really interesting culture, a really interesting variety of people that you get to interact with when you're living here. I will also say military communities, military families, they move about every 3 years on average is when they're getting orders to a new military location. That does mean that there's a lot of turnover in the residents. And the cool thing about that is that new people are always moving in. And when a new person is moving into a community, they are looking for a way to fit in with the community. That means people are really welcoming here, is the point I'm trying to get at. People are always new, always incoming, and that creates a really good sense of community because people are really open to meeting new people, making new friends, finding their place in the community. And so I find Jacksonville to be an incredibly welcoming place to live. Now, along with it being so welcoming because of the incredible military community, I want to tell you some cons of living in a military community. And the one that I really want to talk to you about is the noise in Jacksonville. If you have never lived around a military base, you might be a little surprised at how much noise comes along with living next to a place where they're doing military training. So in Jacksonville, we have Camp Lejeune, and then we also have another military installation, and that is the New River Air Station. From New River, they do a lot of training with helicopters, Ospreys. So you are going to hear the helicopters, the Ospreys. You're going to hear that, and it's a lot louder than you might expect. I will say something that I have learned from living here for so long is that the weather actually affects how loud the noise from base sounds. For example, if it's really cloudy out and they are doing artillery training on base, you're going to hear a lot of big booms, big noises that'll sound sort of like thunder. And when it is cloudy, it is even louder. And I learned that from living here for so long, and someone finally explained to me the reason that is the sound like bounces off the clouds. It kind of gets trapped here, and it can be really loud. And so sometimes you are going to hear that noise during the day. You're probably going to hear that noise during the night, and it's something that you just get used to. It's actually very funny. I think there's a sign right outside New River Air Station. Their sign for entry into the air station says, "Pardon our noise, it's the sound of freedom." And I think that's a great motto for the amount of noise you're probably going to hear while you're here. Now let's talk about some of the things to do here in Jacksonville. What are the activities that you can do with your friends? What kind of entertainment is available? I'm here to tell you that if you're looking for a big entertainment scene like concerts and big events, it's not really here in Jacksonville. Here in Jacksonville, we do have movie theaters, there's the mall, there's a children's museum, trampoline park. There's a lot of family activities. Remember how I said our population is pretty young? So there are a lot of family activities for families with younger children. However, if you're looking for more of like a bar scene or a going out scene, there's not a ton of that here in Jacksonville. If that's a scene that you are looking for, you're probably going to have to drive a little bit to find that. I will say that there are a lot of events that are put on by the city that bring in local vendors, food trucks, and things like that. And there are some events that happen throughout the year that are great to attend. Actually, this beautiful little handmade coffee cup I got at one of these local events that promotes local creators. They do have a lot of events on the base. Every year they have a really big 4th of July celebration. They bring in a popular musician to do a concert, fireworks, and all the stuff. And they've got other events like that on base throughout the year too. But if you're used to a very active, very if you're used to having a lot of options when it comes to entertainment and things to do, you won't necessarily find that here in Jacksonville. Now, a big benefit of living here is the beach. We have access to incredible, beautiful beaches here in North Carolina. And I will say, I have lived in California, and North Carolina beaches are 1,000 times better. Our beaches are beautiful. They are clean. Living in Jacksonville, you are really close to the beach, and so you can utilize those amazing resources. There are free public beaches in Onslow County. Depending on where you live in Jacksonville, it's probably a 20-minute drive, maybe a 30-minute drive to get to that free public beach. If you're military affiliated, you can use the beach on base, which is really, really nice. You should 100% use that beach if you can, because it is so nice, so clean. You've got lifeguards and like bathrooms, showers. It's just really nice. And there are those facilities if you go to the beaches off base as well. There's bathrooms and other facilities that you can use at the public beaches. But I would say the beach and being so close is such a major benefit of living here in Jacksonville. If you like to paddleboard, if you like to surf, if you have a boat or you want to get a boat, those are all things that you can do here. You can go to the beach, to the ocean, but we also have access to a lot of rivers. And so you can kayak down the river, you can paddleboard. Throughout Jacksonville, there are a lot of really nice city parks where you can have access to the river. So you can go in your kayak, in your canoe, in your paddleboard, whatever. There's also places where you can rent a kayak right there. So you go to the park. They have a big like cage where they keep the public kayaks. You just scan it with your phone, pay over your phone, unlock it, get your kayak, and you are good to go down the river. It's so nice. In addition to the beach, there's also really nice parks here in Jacksonville, like I mentioned, playgrounds, splash pads, a nice pool on base. There's not really a public pool I've found here in Jacksonville, but you can always buy a house with a pool or make friends with someone with a pool. That's what I did. At the parks, you're also going to find some trails that go through the woods, which are really nice. If you are willing to drive a little bit north up into Swansboro, there's some really nice parks with trails through the woods, and there's wooden bridges that go over the marshes and just great little nature trails that my family and I love to explore. There's also areas to go camping. If you love being outdoors, then this is a great place for you. All right, so we can't talk about being outdoors without talking about the weather here in North Carolina. So the pro is the weather is beautiful. The con is sometimes it's real humid and we have hurricanes. So overall, the weather here in North Carolina is great. It's warm the majority of the year. Very rarely do we get snow. In my experience living here, I've been here for a little more than 10 years. It has snowed where the snow has actually accumulated on the ground only twice in that entire time. Usually it'll be cold for maybe a month or so, like really cold in the teens, maybe in the 20s. For maybe about a month, usually January, a little bit into February, and then it'll start warming up again. The average temperatures around here in the spring is usually around 60 degrees. In the summer, it does get pretty hot, and so we'll have days, quite a few days that are in the 90s. In the fall, it stays pretty hot, 80s or so. And then in the winter, our average temperature is generally still in the 50s. But like I said, there's some times where it really does dip pretty low. You have to get out your winter coat, but that's not very much of the year. A downfall with the weather is the humidity. So in the summertime when it is hot, it's also like sticky hot, that hot where you go outside and you immediately feel wet. So that feels kind of gross. Also, it rains a lot here, especially in the winter. It seems to me that's when it really rains the most, but the weather here is kind of unpredictable. So there's been multiple times where I've been out on a walk with the kids. We've been somewhere and got caught in like torrential rainfall. It's just something that happens. When it rains, it really rains here. The other thing to keep in mind is we do have hurricanes here. We're on the coast, and there have been some hurricanes that have impacted Jacksonville in the last 5-10 years. So living here, you're just going to want to be aware of when hurricane season is and what you need to do to prepare your home, prepare yourself. After you've been in North Carolina for 1 or 2 hurricane seasons, I promise it won't seem so scary. Okay, so that's my overview of the pros and cons of living here in Jacksonville. Some of the pros that we covered are 1, the cost of housing. Housing here is a lot less expensive than the national average. It's also very affordable for living somewhere on the coast. Another pro for living in Jacksonville is the beach and having access to the beach and all of the other amazing outdoor activities that are available here in the area. Another pro is the community, living in a military community, and all of the different people that brings into the city, in addition to the very welcoming and inviting atmosphere that we have here. We also talked about some cons. One of those cons is the noise from the base. You're just going to have to get used to it because sometimes it is very loud. Another con for you might be the weather. It does rain a lot. Sometimes we have hurricanes. Not much we can do about that. Another con of living in Jacksonville is the geese, I guess, and having to stop on the road for the geese. But overall, living here in Jacksonville has been amazing for me and my family, and I hope that by watching this video, you have a better feel of what it's like to actually live in Jacksonville. Whether you're coming to this area by choice because you want to live somewhere beautiful by the beach, or you're coming to this area because you have military orders and you just want to get a better feel for what it's going to be like once you get here. If you are coming into Jacksonville and you want some help finding the perfect home for you and your family, please feel free to reach out to me. I would absolutely love to help you find a place to call home. I love living here and I would love to share that with you. If you are a Jacksonville local and you have anything to add to this, please leave it down in the comments, and I'd love to hear your pros and cons of living here and any advice you want to share with newcomers to the area. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.